and welcome back to another episode of It's Negotiable. I am your co-host, Ernestine Morrison.
And I'm Amber Ty.
And on this podcast, we talk all things negotiable and non-negotiable, setting boundaries with people, places, and things that do not serve God's purpose for your life. But because of your obedience, some things are actually negotiable.
That's right.
Oh, wow.
I'm so excited.
I feel like we haven't been, we had a 2-week break.
Yeah, it's been a minute, honey.
Yeah, we had a 2-week break.
2-week break.
And we're back.
We're back.
We're back. And you see, Amber and I have got the
we have the fall colors.
The matching fall. I'm hitting off her off-white.
Yes.
But we have a phenomenal guest with us today.
I'm so
Amber,
excited.
I'm going to let you introduce who we have sitting at the It's Negotiable pod with us today.
Yes. This most amazing, beautiful soul. Her spirit just radiates to the camera. I'm sure you guys can feel it. This is Miss Iasia Sweeting. Did I say that? Sweeting.
Yes.
Yes, because she is sweet.
Yes.
To the core. Some of you may or may not have heard her story, but she has a phenomenal story to tell.
Yeah.
And it is a story that I feel like so many women, we hear about sex trafficking and the dangers of it, and be careful when you go to Walmart, be careful, watch your surroundings when you're in Target, all
or
these
the
different
airport or
but it doesn't hit home until you meet someone who's really gone through it. And the way she got there was just, it's just something that you don't think about. You think that this is going to happen through a stranger. You think this is going to happen by somebody just putting a bag over your head in the parking lot. But that wasn't her story. And I just cannot wait for her to share her story so that we can learn as women the signs, what to look out for.
But Iasia, the first question we ask everyone is, what is something that used to be a non-negotiable that's negotiable now for you?
Oh, that's a really good one. I would say something that was a non-negotiable for me would be family time. We have so many things going on in our lives, and sometimes family time is high and by, and I see you after work, after school, and we're not really getting into what is our child doing? What is our mom going through? What are our siblings experiencing? We don't get a chance to really spend family time a lot of times because of just the busyness of life. Yeah. And so that was a non-negotiable for me.
But now,
like I make time. I center and create work and life and school and education around making sure that we get a chance to communicate as a family, and we are having those conversations about, what's new in your life, who's new in your life, what's going on, how are you feeling about it,
what relationships are you building, like really getting to know what's going on in your life.
Exactly. And so
so you've negotiated your non-negotiables to make sure that family time is not negotiable.
Exactly. That's a mandatory thing for me now. So where it used to be, I'm prioritizing getting to the next level, making sure I, show up and get to this conference and do this. But now I'm prioritizing, did you get a chance to talk to your daughter about, that thing that she did or said, that behavioral issue that popped up when she was with this person, those things are so very important because it helps us stay on track with like
the people we love.
Because ultimately that's what we do all of this for. That's why we're working. That's why we're hustling and investing in ourselves and investing in their future, because we love them and we want to actually spend more time with them.
Iasia, I want to get right into it because I want our audience to really, really hear your story and what you went through. And I was reading sex trafficking industry, the human trafficking industry is a $99 billion industry. 4.5 million people a year are either sex trafficked, human trafficked. In this state of Georgia alone, 4 out of every 100,000 people are sex trafficked, which is wild numbers.
Exactly.
What was your story?
So for me, what I experienced is more specifically called domestic minor sex slavery.
Domestic minor sex slavery.
Yes. So most of the time when people hear sex trafficking, they're thinking of, I'll just go ahead and say it. They're thinking of a young girl that's being forced to prostitute herself out on the street.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
We're here in Atlanta. I'm born and raised here in Atlanta. So, most people here think Fulton Industrial, or certain areas where there's obvious open prostitution. But a huge part of my journey has been to help people understand that sex trafficking looks a lot of different ways. Okay. And we have all these terminologies, but specifically what I went through was domestic minor sex slavery. So I was being held captive as a domestic minor sex slave. And I am very blessed to not have been forced into prostitution. But that is a very likely thing that does happen here in Atlanta.
Can you explain the difference between what you're saying is like someone who is forced into prostitution versus a minor domestic sex slave?
Right. So someone who's being forced into prostitution, they might not show up on a street corner. Okay. There are youth that we have learned are experiencing forced prostitution and sex trafficking, and they go to school every day and they have good grades and they come home every evening, and just on the weekends when they're hanging with their friends, or so their parents think, they could have someone influencing them or coercing them or forcing them to exchange sex and sexual favors for money.
Wow.
Right. And sometimes they keep some of that money. Sometimes they keep none of that money. Sometimes that money goes into the hands of someone else. Sometimes it's distributed amongst gangs. But the most important thing to know is that it's happening.
So tell us how your story began.
Okay. So for me, my story began on the MARTA. That's Georgia's public transportation system. I've always been a very independent and intellectual child. And so I was in high school. This was my 10th going into 11th. Oh, my 11th going into 12th grade year. And so I would catch public transportation to get to school. And I attended a very wonderful performing arts school here in Atlanta that many famous people have come from. So I absolutely loved school. And I felt like school loved me back. I was born for it. I'm a writer and a poet, and I've been writing poetry since I was 4 years old.
Wow.
And performing since I was about 8 or 9. And so when I had the opportunity to go to performing arts school, and I lived outside of the district of where my school, usually the students come from, I was like, well, some way, somehow I have to get to school. So,
and I just want to confirm, you were living who was at home? Were you living with both parents?
I wasn't. I was raised by a single mother.
Okay, so you were living in the house with your mother.
Yes.
At the time.
Absolutely.
Copy.
Yes. And never really had a present father. But for the first, I want to say about first 10 years of my life, I was raised in my childhood with my stepfather, and him and my mom separated around the time that I was about 10 or 11. So
back to you were going to take the bus, the train, whatever you had to do to get to the school.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I had to catch 2 buses and 2 trains.
Wow.
Every morning. So I'm leaving out of the house around 5 in the morning, just to get to school at 8:20.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yes. And as I usually did on my daily routine, I would be doing homework. I usually would be on the train with my head in the book. And just this one day, you know, head in the book, doing some homework. And a young man approached me who seemed like he was my age. And just to say, you know, I experienced a lot of stuff on public transportation. It was not unnormal for much older and even sometimes grandpa type men to be approaching me and wanting to talk to me and tell me I'm beautiful and things like that. And everybody I'm just dismissing. I'm like, okay, yes, thank you, you know, to be kind and cordial. But then I always revert back to focusing on, you know, my journey and my path and what I was doing. And so this young man, you know, it seemed like he was no different. I was like, oh, okay, you know, it's probably just somebody that wants to talk to me.
Be friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I didn't really take it seriously. You know, it was like a high and by moment at first. But then I started to notice that he was catching this route every day along with me. So we had an intersection that started to make me take him more seriously. And so, you know, he had been asking for my number. And he was very kind, seemingly, you know, in the beginning, he seemed very kind and just like a genuinely good person. So eventually I was like, okay, well, we see each other every day. I'm not going to be able to avoid.
Yeah, like we might as well. And how old are you at this point?
I was 16.
You're 16.
Yes. And I didn't even have a cell phone of my own at this time. I had to give him my mom's number. So I was like, okay, you know, you can call my mom and she'll give me the phone. And so, you know, we became friends, and or what I thought was friends.
Sure.
And you know, he would catch the bus to my house. Hang out with me and my family.
Wow.
He spent a few holidays with us.
Oh my God.
So I met him in October, around October of 2009. You know, around in the fall time. And by April of 2010, I was missing. And my mom was reporting me missing, and I had been kidnapped by him and his father.
Oh my gosh.
So
August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April. So for 8 months almost, he courted you.
Right.
Befriended you, got close to your family,
right.
Became a part of your inner circle, built a real relationship with you. And 8 months in, the day finally came.
And ultimately built trust.
Right.
Really.
Yes. Or what I thought was trust.
Yeah.
Yes.
Walk us through the day.
And I definitely will, but I just want to let you know that process of, you said courting, that's a really good word, but the even better term for it is called grooming.
Grooming.
Yes. So I didn't realize that I was being groomed.
Wow.
To, like you said, you know, to trust this person, you know, to take them at their word and you know, have the faith that, you know, they have good intentions for your friendship or for your life.
And
so when you say, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. And he was your age, around your age.
Yes. I was 16, and I turned 17 March of 2010, and I think he was a few months older than me,
so
but we were both 17.
So he had been groomed to do this.
Yes.
So tell me, when we talk about the differences, I want our audience to really understand the wording, because wording is so important, like the difference between grooming and courting. So, I mean, essentially he was doing both, but what did grooming look like? Did it look like planting seeds in your mind? Did it look like steering you and directing you into certain situations? Or, you know, what did the grooming process look like?
It was very, very subtle, because I still grapple with this to this day. Did he know that his father was grooming him to groom me?
Yeah.
Right. So to this day, I don't know.
Wow.
Because he came across as a very genuine person. And it seemed like it was a very real and genuine friendship. So it's just one of those things that, you know how they say every lie has a bit of truth to it. So I believe that the persona that he was giving me was his true persona. And I don't know if he knew that his father intended to utilize the friendship that we had built as a means to hold me captive. And
when you think about it, like Amber
enslaving.
said, if he was your same age, it's like one could only imagine that he was also being groomed.
Yes. And I actually, that's a very good point, because I actually found out, this is much years later, I found out that he was originally from a completely different state, from the state of Virginia. And he was raised by a single mother. And his father was not even originally a part of his life. And he was also kidnapped by his father and brought here to Georgia.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
So I was like,
he's also
okay,
a victim.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that, it adds another layer of complication, and I think a lot of times when we're thinking about sex slavery or trafficking, we think it's simple. People need money. This person is making this person do this to get the money, and it's just a smooth transaction, and that's the main motivation. But in this situation, it's much more layers of complication.
Yeah.
Mental illness coupled with, just societal issues. It's deep.
So you're 16 years old. You meet a guy who is a boy who is also your age on public transportation. He grooms you and courts you for 8 months, and then you're kidnapped.
Yes.
Can you walk us through that day?
So it was more of a situation of coercion, because we're into the friendship at this point. And, I really like him. He really likes me. He spent holidays with me and my family. And so I wanted to begin to date him. And so I went to my mom one day and I was like, I really like this person. And I want to date him. And she's like, well, you know what? We really don't know that much about him, though. And what I now understand was my mother's intuition, her women's intuition had kicked in, and her discernment had kicked in. And she was not feeling, his energy. There was something that she couldn't put her finger on at the time. And
Jesus.
She couldn't really communicate it properly to me, that she didn't approve of us dating. And I was like, but we have so much in common. I'm a virgin, he's a virgin, and we have such good conversations, and he's kind, and here in Atlanta at that time, I didn't feel like I was running across a lot of young men that were my age, that had that kind of generosity and intelligence and so on and so forth. And, when you're a teenager, you think that everything is like the last of all the things. Right. So I was like, this could be the last, possible. Right. In my mind, I'm like, this could be my future husband. What do you mean I can't date him because we don't know enough about him? He's been here every day almost.
Right.
And she said, well, I wasn't going to bring this up, but 2 times he had stayed past the time that the buses start running, right, at our house. We're just talking and having fun and all of this. And so he had to be dropped off at home. And so one time my brother who was old enough to drive, attempted to drive him home. And he lived in Gwinnett, somewhere. And he said, well, you could just drop me here at this gas station because I have to pick up something before I go home. And my brother was like, okay. Because it's late. He's ready to get back to doing whatever he was doing. And he just dropped him off at the gas station. And my mom, when he got home, my mom asked my brother, oh, okay, so, you know, where did you drop him off at? And he was like, oh, I just dropped him off at the gas station because he said he needed to pick something up.
It was a red flag for her.
That was a red flag for her. And then another time, it was her taking him home, and the same thing happened, essentially. He was like, oh, you could just drop me at this grocery store because I have to pick up, you know, some diapers for my sister's baby. And which, you know, during the course of this friendship, you know, I had talked to his family over the phone. Wow. So I knew he had a sister. I knew she had a baby. Yeah. You know, I've heard all of these voices. I've become what I think is friends with, you know, all of these people in his family.
Jesus.
And they were real people to me. You know, they were real people. You know, his sister seemed so nice over the phone. He said that they pray, his family, at 2 times a day, they stop whatever they're doing and they all pray together. And, you know, here I am, you know, wishing like, oh man, my family, we love each other. We're super close. But, you know, everybody's off doing their things and we see each other, you know, the way most families see each other after work, after school. And I'm like, man, I love that. You know, I wish my family was like that. Yeah. And I was looking up to them. Yeah. Not realizing that, yes, they did do those things. But it wasn't what I thought it was. Yeah. You know, it was something else also going on behind closed doors. Like, for instance, the fact that, you know, he himself was on the missing and exploited children's list. Wow. While
you guys are building this friendship, he's on the list.
Exactly. Wow. So I think that's another important thing. Like,
but at this time, you didn't know he was on this list.
Right. Because if somebody's like sitting here in front of you and they say they go to school or go to work every day, that was another thing that made him stand out when we met. He said that he was a working electrician at 17. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. Right. You know, he's on this internship and he's a working electrician. Like, who is there at 17?
So tell us about that day. The day that you went missing and you knew something was really wrong.
I didn't know it until it was too late. And so my mother denied my request to want to date him. She said I didn't know enough about him. And so at this point, I start to ask him questions and, you know, complain about it. Like, well, you know, my mom says we can't date because I don't know enough about you. And you've been to my house and you met my family. And I know I've spoken to your family over the phone, but I never met your family. And I don't even know where you live. And he was very cryptic about it. And a lot of times he will always just brush it off and say, well, my dad says this and my dad says that. And I understood, you know, that his dad played a very huge role in his life, to the point where.
But at this point, you never met the dad.
Never met. Yeah. And so I knew his dad played a huge role in his life. And basically anything that his dad told him to do, he was going to do it. So he was saying his dad said not to let me know where he lived. And particularly, he was giving me the message that they didn't live anywhere. They were borderline homeless, but not quite homeless. So maybe they were bouncing around to hotels and stuff like that, or maybe they were ashamed of where they lived. Like that was the story that he was giving me, and he was like, but when we get settled and when we have somewhere, you know, that we live, then I will tell you. And then you can meet my family, and they can't wait to meet you. So I'm so excited, thinking like, okay, well, you know, that day will come. It came about 2 weeks after my 17th birthday. And now looking back, I understand that it was all a part of a master plan, so to speak. But I believe his father waited intentionally until I turned 17, knowing that in society, there's this sense of urgency when it's a child that you take, right? But after a certain age, then, especially with Black youth, young Black boys and girls, after 17, people are like, oh, they darn near
almost
grown.
An adult. Yeah,
they should know better, you know. And that's exactly what ended up happening to me. So 2 weeks ago, I had just celebrated my birthday, and he was like, I want you to meet my family. And, you know, I'm just coming off of this high of I'm 17 now, you know, I'm getting gifts and all of this, and I'm getting older and I'm feeling more mature and all of this stuff, you know. And he was like, yeah, come and meet my family. So I'm just thinking that, and then it was also around this time of spring break. So I was like, okay, you know, I get to meet his family. And I was headed to art camp soon after that. So I was like, it's a great time because, you know, I'll be away for a long time.
You're about to go away. Yeah,
exactly. So I just caught the bus with him. We caught the train. He did actually live in Gwinnett. And I'm realizing that like the gas station and the grocery store that he got dropped off at is like walking distance to his house. So he wasn't lying.
So it's all checking out to you now.
Yeah. I was like, oh yeah, my mom didn't know what she was talking about. Like,
yeah.
Of course, you know, he was just probably ashamed, or he probably actually did have to pick up those things and she was just being, you know, paranoid or whatever. So I'm, you know, my whole 17-year-old world is like, oh, everything is working. It makes total sense.
Yeah.
Until we get to the apartment that he said was his. And at this time I had, you know, one of those little Obama phones that we had back then. Okay. So I had it was like a track phone.
Oh yeah, like a prepaid type situation.
Right. It was a prepaid phone that had like minutes on it.
Yeah, minute. Yeah.
That's I had gotten that for my birthday, and that's how I was able to communicate with my mom. We would just like text, and I would let her know, you know, I'm here, I'm doing this is going on. And so he was like, oh, well, my dad isn't home, and I don't think he would want us to be in the apartment by ourselves with no adult supervision. Because like I said, you know, he was very mannerable and seemed very that was his demeanor was that way, very much so a gentleman and things like that. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, because I was coming from school, so I had my backpack, and he was like, so can I use your phone to call my dad and see how far away he is? Wow, because he has the family with him. And I was like, sure. And I had to use the restroom, and had my my bag. And he was like, you could just go use the bathroom and put your bag down in the house or in the apartment. And he's like, I'm gonna just call him. And
you're still not feeling weird though. You're still feeling normal. You're like, okay, I mean, cool.
It was a gorgeous apartment. You know, a beautiful day. Wow. And everything seemed normal. So I go up to the apartment. It was on the it was an upstairs apartment, and the first thing that I noticed was that there was no furniture in the apartment. But I'm like, okay, this family is a little different. You know, I didn't fully understand what their religious profile was, but it was not fully Christian, not fully Muslim, but like a gray area. And, you know, he would be trying to like tell me things about what he believed and how he believed. And that was another red flag for my mom. I was born and raised completely Baptist Christian.
Yeah.
And so she was very skeptical, like, well, is he Christian? Is he not? Like, what is he? So the first thing that popped in my mind was maybe the no furniture thing is a thing for them, a religious thing. Or he did just say that they just kind of got settled in. So maybe, you know, this is not, they haven't got a chance to move in yet.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, that is a little alarming. Okay, very alarming, but I'm not freaking out just yet. So.
Yeah. So he's asked to use your phone, and then you go to the bathroom.
Yes. So he's outside the building downstairs, and I'm in the apartment, and I noticed there's no furniture and stuff like that. So, you know, I use the restroom and I'm coming out, trying to come out of the apartment to ask him about it. And before I could make it out, his father comes in and pushes me to a back closet in one of the empty rooms.
Jesus.
And locks me into the closet. And that's when I realized it was too late.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, this is bad. This is really, really bad. So I'm alarmed at this point. I'm screaming, I'm yelling. I'm like, let me out. I'm beating on the door, walls, floor, trying to climb up the ceiling, and I'm terrified.
You're in a closet.
A banshee in a closet. And that's the day.
Wow. Whew.
Yeah. A very
you walk into an empty apartment where there's clearly signs of like something's not right. There's no furniture here. This young man asks to use your phone to make a phone call. He leaves the apartment to make this phone call. You go to the restroom and come out to being pushed and shoved into a closet. That's the beginning.
And that is a product of that grooming process and that trust that I thought we had. When someone says they're a good person and, you know, everything in their life is kind of lining up to look that way. They say they pray 2 times a day and they spend all this family time together, and they're a huge part of their niece's life.
Yeah.
And, you know, they just carry themselves a certain way. You take them at their word. And you just don't know what a person's intentions are.
What happens next? You're in the closet?
I'm living in this closet for maybe, because I don't know exactly how long, but maybe 2 to 3 weeks. And wow. I'm on a train schedule pretty much. His father and his sister, who these people that I thought I knew from talking to them on the phone. I live in this closet. I sleep in this closet.
You're not allowed outside the closet.
They escort me to the bathroom, which is next door, right next to the closet. And my life for the next month or so is
in this closet.
To the bathroom, to the closet.
Are they feeding you?
To the bathroom, to the closet. Yeah, they would bring food. They were feeding me like normal stuff, like oatmeal. It wasn't strange food, but I mean, it's strange when you're in a captive state.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you think of like an animal, how we take animals out of the wild. Mm-hmm. And you know, I'm this girl with a MARTA card that whenever I want to get up and go to Little 5 Points or to Grant Park and read and, you know, sit by the pond, and, you know, I'm used to being able to get up and just go at the swipe of my card. And now I'm in a closet.
Wow.
Did you feel like in those, I mean, I know that this went on for years, but in those first 2 to 3 weeks, did you feel like it was over? Did you feel like...
I was like, oh, they're definitely going to kill me. They're probably going to cook me. I don't know. It was a lot going on. His father, you know, so there was a lot of, this word is dehumanization happening. Yeah. You know, because he had to condition me. It was basically like slave conditioning and dehumanization. So the very first dehumanizing thing that happened was immediately, I want to say maybe after 2 or 3 days of being taken back and forth to the bathroom, they're making me bathe, and he's basically saying that I'm a filthy, disgusting person, and they're super clean, and I need to clean myself. And
when you say he, are you referring to the dad or the son?
The father. I didn't see his son until it was like his son just basically was just there to
get you there,
get me there.
Never saw him again.
No, I did see him again, but he was not allowed to. His father wouldn't allow him to look at me, talk to me. By the time we started seeing each other, it was like 4 months later, after they had moved me out of the closet. And by this time, we're already in a hotel. And his son just acted like I was not there. Wow. And if he wanted to say something to me, he had to say it to the sister or to the dad, and then they would relay it to me, even though we're literally in the same room.
So about like 4 months go by, and you're transported from the apartment to now a hotel or a motel?
Yes.
Oh, and during this transport, did you see anyone else in the public, or like, did you try to scream? Did you try to fight, or?
No. So they put me in this large tote. I've always been small like this.
Wow.
So during the transportation process, I was in the back of some kind of van. It was probably like a moving van. Mm-hmm. Inside of this tote.
Wow.
And when they let me out,
you were already in a hotel.
I was in the room. So.
And that's where you stay for the next 4 years?
Yes. Wow. It was about 4 years and 7 months.
Wow.
So I know it's such a detailed story, but give us a little bit more about what happened within those 4 years. And
right. So within the first month, his father, during what I would call the dehumanization process, he was making me bathe with this special kind of soap that kind of like it gets like a lot of dead skin off. So it was really hard for me because it was seeming like the stuff that he was saying was true, and everything that I had been learning my whole life started to kind of unravel. Wow. And it was looking like everything was a lie. So I found out that their religion they were called Nuwaubians. If you've ever heard of the history of the Nuwaubian people in Georgia, it's a crazy story about what is considered to be a cult that was started by a man, I think in New York, and then he came here to Georgia at some point and tried to create a community of people down in South Georgia.
What's the core belief?
Their core belief was like Egyptian science, I guess, and yeah, a very Egyptian leaning.
But I'm saying, like, what's the foundational principle? Do they believe in like holding people captive and breeding a family together? Like, what is their
right? Okay, so they believe that they believe in extraterrestrials, in a sense that there was a extraterrestrial ship that was coming to pick up Black people.
Wow.
And so it intertwined a little bit with Christianity from what they were trying to teach me, insofar as, you know, in Christianity, people believe that Jesus is coming back and he's going to
take his people.
He's going to take his people and have a rapture. Well, they had a rapture too. It's just that they believed that Jesus was like maybe an acronym for a group of extraterrestrial beings that are going to come on a UFO type ship and carry the people to a different planet.
Wow.
And so I'm like, I'm being forced. Nubians. Yes. And you know, I later learned that religion is so powerful. And the politics of religion is so powerful that we often don't talk about the people that go rogue in religions. And so I don't know if there's any residual truth to what those people believed in. But what I do know is that the family that took me captive, they were claiming that group. And I know that they don't represent the whole group. Just like, you know, somebody who's raised Muslim, and if they go and, you know, shoot up a church or something like that, it doesn't represent all Muslims. Right? It's just that person, you don't know what their story has been.
Thank you for pointing that out too, because that's important to point out, because sometimes a group will be generalized as one thing because a sector of that group or one person from that group is representing themselves
as
adversely, and you don't represent this whole group.
Exactly. That's the same thing with Christianity.
I mean,
exactly. And I don't. So one thing I can say about, you know, my story and experiencing captivity, it forced me to look at my religion, my beliefs, my understanding and knowledge of self in a completely, totally different way than how I was raised to believe. Because for the first time in my life, even under these detrimental and pressure-filled circumstances, someone is presenting me under duress, but presenting me with knowledge that I had never been exposed to.
Now, are they giving you resources? Are they giving you the Bible? Are there resources that they have you reading, or they're just verbally teaching you these things?
All of the above.
Wow.
So they would come into the closet. Everybody would pile into that closet. He would force us to read from the Bible, force us to read from the Quran, force us to read from their book called the Holy Tablets. And cross-reference all of these things, and also, you know, just reading this information in all these different books, and also understanding my own life experience and my cross intersections with racism and you know, what it's like being raised as a Black girl in Atlanta. A lot of this information is like, man, oh my God, that there's some truth here.
Yeah,
the Quran
this kind of
is
makes
saying
sense.
this, and I've experienced that before, you know, and because, you know, I'm in this highly charged cultic environment, I'm having to learn this all day, every day. Now, I will admit, I am a study type person. Before I was even kidnapped, I think that was probably one of the things that made his son latch on to me so much, is that
your intelligence.
Right. And I've always loved learning. It's always been an insatiable quest for me. And, but I also, I love my autonomy and my freedom as well.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, through this process, was there abuse? And was the abuse, I mean, of course, the whole situation's abusive, but I mean physical abuse. Tell us what that looked like. Was it connected to their religion? Would they tell you, I'm doing this because this is what we believe in? Did they try to justify their actions through their religion?
Yeah, almost all the time. So his father believed that I was a reincarnated deity. He renamed me almost within like the first month that I was there. So he started calling me Ma'at Atumre. So I didn't have my name anymore. Everyone is calling me a different name. At that time I had starter locks. I had just started my lock journey. So, I had a lot of product buildup. You guys know the struggle of Black ladies' hair. Had a lot of product buildup because I'm trying to, I think my locks, they weren't even fully matured. They had just started to bud, so he was making me do all of these baths and bathing rituals. And this is after he had taken my virginity by force. So I just want to point that out, that all those things were connected at this time. He's changed my name. He's taken my virginity by force. He's making me bathe vigorously and commenting on, the level of product buildup and the color of the bath water when I get out of the bath. Wow. And making me feel like I'm just dirty and disgusting, and nobody ever taught me how to take care of myself. Nobody ever taught me how to groom myself. Nobody ever taught me how to bathe properly. I've been doing everything wrong. I've been praying to the wrong God, apparently. My hair is disgusting, and these are things that he's telling me. It has like dust mites in it. So he cuts off all of my locks. And I am... It took a lot of courage for me to start the lock journey to begin with, because I grew up with a mother who was a hairstylist and a braidologist. And, even since kindergarten, if I wanted crochets and braids and beads that go down my back, I was getting it. Yeah. So it just added another layer of complication onto my own life.
In these 4 years, as he's bathing you, grooming you, took your virginity, you are literally in captivity for 4 years. Obviously, psychologically, he's planting seeds, he's grooming your mind. Did you start to believe and buy into all of this? Were you bought in?
I mean, yes. And I think that's a part of our nature as human beings, for one. Anything that we do consistently, especially, I'm not even a fully formed adult yet. I'm still a teenager. Yeah. And so, yeah, a lot of that information that I'm being forced to consume. And then also just this element of, I've learned recently, whoever feeds you, literally, and mentally and spiritually controls you.
Wow.
Right. So if you don't have control over where you're getting your food, and all the ways of consuming, like your information, your entertainment, I couldn't just go. There was no TVs. Okay. So I couldn't just go in the living room,
turn on the TV and
watch a cartoon, that I grew up watching, or jump on the computer and learn a new skill or listen to a music video like I could before, right? Jesus. So I'm not in control of my own entertainment. I'm not in control of when I eat, how I eat, what I eat, if I eat. And there was definitely rules and stipulations put on. If you don't finish reading this chapter, or if you can't explain this to me by this time, then you're not getting dinner. You're not getting breakfast. This meal is tied into your performance of
wow.
It's captivity, right?
Just to make sure everyone heard what she just said, because that is so powerful. Whoever feeds you mentally, spiritually, emotionally controls you. That is so deep, because it's not just like, yeah, this person was physically feeding you, but he was mentally feeding you. So what you listen to, what you watch, who you hang around, like where you invest your time, like all of that is feeding you. So if you're not careful or intentional about what you're being fed, who's feeding you, how they're feeding you, it can control you.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That is powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I think my nature as a human being, and just as,
Jesus,
a young woman.
Yeah.
If something is being constantly pumped into your psyche, you're going to
believe
you're going to go to sleep thinking about, well, dang, is that true? Because I remember that time, this happened and it seemed like that was going on. And
yeah.
I remember asking, I've always had it didn't help that I also always had very strong leanings toward Africa and Egyptology and knowledge and world history. Even as a child, my mom said that when I was like in the 2nd grade, I asked her to buy me Roots, the book.
Not the movie.
I didn't even know there was a movie. Wow. I wanted the book.
Who does a thick book?
That was it. Was. I wanted Roots, the book. And I've always been a writer. I've always been writing poetry. And she said I've always wanted to go to Africa, visit Africa. I've always been a global world learner, and traveling the world through books, and so I remember when I was like 11 or 12 years old, we were outside of my mom's salon that she worked at, and this brother had didn't know me. I didn't know him. He was a brother with locks.
Yeah.
And he sold jewelry, and he just randomly gifted me this Ankh necklace, and he was like, "You need this," and I was like, okay. I mean, it's a necklace, but as my mind worked, I started doing research. What is this symbol? What does it mean? Why does he feel that I need this?
Yeah.
Why is it resonating with me? And so
it's almost like you attracted it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now I fully understand it. I understand the power of manifestation,
law of attraction,
all of those things. I understand, your life's journey and purpose that, the Creator has been preparing you for that your whole life.
Wow.
Your whole life.
That's so good.
At the time, it was a very heavy realization.
Was there a moment, so we're talking about, what feeds you controls you. Was there at any time that you were in this apartment that you could have escaped, that you thought about escaping, but you're being controlled and you're thinking, I better not try that, or I'm now connected to this, maybe this is my life now? Was there ever a moment that you said, I could run out that door, but I'm not going to?
Yes and no. So I had several escape attempts, and I had a very few that were almost very successful, but especially at the hotel. You know, there was this one time that I made it all the way down the fire escape stairs. I made it out of the building to the back of the building, into like a small parking lot, and there were cars and there were people, right? But this is during the time that I had been he had been starving me, so I'm very weak. And as soon as I hit the door outside, the sun beams on me, and I realize I have not had the sun shine directly on my skin in probably months, almost years.
A year, yeah.
And like it almost crippled me. It was like a flashbang when I felt the sun. But I'm like, you know, very emaciated and low energy. But in your mind, you're moving as fast as you can, right? But in reality, you're probably like moving like a snail.
Yeah.
But this is the energy that you have to get out. And so people, there maybe like 2 or 3 people saw me get out of that door. And I didn't get very far. I didn't even get off the curb to try to get to a more well-lit place before his daughter, who was very fast and much taller and stronger than me and older than me, she was right on my heels, and she literally drugged me back into this hotel. And I know for a fact that there were people who saw that. They saw this girl barely stumble out of this building. There was a car that was moving, so someone was driving. And so I know they had to have seen maybe something, even if it was like at the corner of their eye, like, is she dragging her back in there?
Yeah.
And I think this was like before camera phone culture.
Yeah.
Which I'm so grateful for camera phone culture now, because everyone has a camera phone, and people, when
that
they
would
see
have been
something
viral
weird,
as soon as someone would have saw that.
It would have been so viral. But
and this it was a motel or a hotel?
it was an extended
stay. So during this time, extended stay, were there cleaning people coming in and out during this 4-year period?
Right. Yes. And people always ask me this. They did. They had a cleaning person who was responsible for the hotel.
Yeah.
For the looks of it, she did not speak English. I think she, because she didn't understand anything that I ever tried to say to her.
So you tried to speak to her.
I did once or twice. I had the chance to talk to her. She didn't speak English, but they just started to pay her, and to not clean the room. They would pay her to not clean the room.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I saw her like in the beginning, maybe once or twice.
In 4 years?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
So his sexual abuse resulted in children, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Right. So
tell us about that.
Both of my daughters, my first 2 children, were born as a result of me being in captivity.
Wow.
So I was impregnated by the young man's father, and it's just so much to say. I'm sorry. It's so much to say about, I call it like it's a genetic hijacking, right? Because I didn't get a chance to choose who the father of my children would be.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, and also, you know, I didn't have any access to any health care or anything like that.
You birthed both children in the hotel?
Yes, both of my daughters were born in that hotel. Jesus. They were unassisted births. And a lot of the health complications that I deal with and struggle with today are a result of those traumatic births without having
any
the
assistance.
healthcare.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not to say that like a natural birth outside of the hospital is gonna always go bad, because I realize now that what I experienced was I was in a captive state. I didn't. One thing now that I have had a daughter outside of captivity, I understand that we call them pregnancy cravings. But when a woman is pregnant, she's like, I need to try this with that, and I want these pickles and this ice cream together, and this is, so we have what we think are pregnancy cravings. But I have since learned more about the body and understanding that you need different vitamins and minerals from different places to be able to build that child inside of you, right? And so my nutrition was whatever they gave me. Yeah. And it was lacking in a lot of areas. And obviously, just physical, mental, emotional abuse every day. Right.
I just can't even imagine. It's already hard having a child assisted, not in a hospital with all the drugs in the world, and to have a child in captivity. And who did the sister or he help you birth, or did you just birth yourself? What was that process?
So my first birth, it was about 95% me, basically. Jesus. And this is really hard to explain, but I have to rewind a little bit and let you understand that he had impregnated his own daughter at the same time as me. So, oh my gosh. So we are both pregnant at the same time. Wow. I've attempted unsuccessfuri to escape. The moment I realized that I was pregnant, I kept having these seizures. There was my family has dealt with something called polycystic kidney disease. So at that time, I didn't realize it, but I was preeclamptic because of the kidney disease and the trauma. What it is that we have a gene in my family that follows. Yeah, it's in our DNA, right? And this gene determines whether or not you will have kidney disease and need dialysis, right? But it's triggered by traumatic things in your life. So if there is no trauma, then the gene won't get triggered. Wow. And you'll be fine, and you probably won't ever develop any cysts, or it'll be so late in life that it won't affect you. And it's no big deal. But obviously in my situation, that gene was triggered at some point. And it also goes by, like your lifestyle, how you eat and stuff like that. Yeah. So that was causing me to have preeclampsia, or what I now think was preeclampsia, because I was having these seizures and I would like black out, and they would have to like slap me to wake me up. Wow. They would have to pour water on me or do something.
You're having seizures. You're literally having medical emergencies, and you can't go to a hospital. There's no one calling 911. There's no one calling an ambulance. You're literally being really just self-taken care of. Right. In captivity, while being pregnant, while having seizures. It's like by the grace of God that you are still here. Wow.
It gets way worse, but you're absolutely right about that. I know my whole life I've always known I'm here for a reason. Jesus. But after captivity, I'm very 100% sure, like, you cannot convince me that I just evolved randomly from a fish. Right. I know that there was definitely a meaning, a purpose. There's organized, higher power at work in my functioning and being here to even speak to you guys today. Jesus.
This week I was meditating on the book of Psalms, and I read the scriptures like the Lord stays close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. And like you were broken and crushed and like God saved you.
Yes, I've been broken
time and time again,
and crushed and put back together time and time again. You're so right about that. I actually, I created my nonprofit, after I was rescued.
Sealed in purpose.
Yes, yeah. And that's what our mission and our entire story is about, taking those pieces of broken pottery, and putting them back together
with gold.
With gold, yes, absolutely.
It's I read it's kintsugi, right?
Kintsugi. Yes, it's the kintsugi method. Yeah. Yes.
Wow. Yes. Amber, we gotta make this a part 2. We're gonna have to cut and come back for a part 2 because this is so good, and we've got to really, really hear this entire story and this entire journey. Yeah. So we're going to close this episode out with the word of the day, and we're going to come back next week. You'll have to guys tune in for part 2 of this. I don't want to say amazing story because nothing was amazing about it and nothing was easy about it. But what makes it an amazing story is how God saved you, how God pulled you through, the resilience of being bended, broken, and stretched and bouncing back and being able to sit on a podcast and talk about this story. Like God saved you.
Yeah.
Like I just can't even believe that you're talking to us. Like when I say God saved you, it's like, wow, there is a huge purpose and calling on your life.
And something can be amazing and still be grotesque and scary
and broken,
trying and broken at the same time,
and turn out beautiful,
and you can be all of those things at once. So yes, I was trying to tell you guys, it's a very involved story.
It's deep.
There's several layers. There's the story of him and his daughter and their dynamic and her role in helping him keep me captive, and his son's role in helping me keep me captive. And you asked a question about, was there ever a time where I could have escaped, but I just, just didn't try. I was severely outnumbered, overpowered, and definitely broken in so many ways. And my mind was being pulled in so many directions. But there was a truth in myself that I knew that this was not the end of my story. And this is not, this might be a part of my story, but I knew that it was not meant for me to live my life out in that room.
It wasn't the end.
But we don't want this to be the end. Do you have time for a part 2?
We have time for a part 2. We have to do a part 2. Amber, go ahead and take us out with the word of the day. And guys, we're going to come back next week with a part 2 and continue this conversation.
I had a word that was more appropriate for part 2. So I'm going to switch it up a little bit. And I'll intertwine this word with the word for next week. But the word is overcome. And it's a pretty simple word, but the definition, succeed in dealing with a problem or difficulty. So to me, I think that we just think, we get past it, but it's like, it's dealing with it in the moment, and you dealt with a lot in the moment. So you overcame each moment every single day to get you here. And I just think that is just so powerful. Sometimes we take these words that are so simple, but they have so much meaning. So what can you do to overcome in your difficult moment? How do you succeed in your difficult moment when it looks like this is the end? So, but this is not the end. Stay tuned for part 2 with Miss Iasia Sweeting on we'll be back
next week. Tune in next week for part 2 of this episode of It's Negotiable.